Warren Stone was New York City's premier reporter until Baron Draxum's mosquitoes transformed him into a lowly earthworm. The only memorable feature that remained? His iconic hair. Freshly mutated, Warren was unceremoniously ejected from the hard-hitting world of news. Everybody seems to have forgotten who he was, nobody misses him, and everyone has moved on, buried him. He harbors resentment towards all of his fellow former co-workers, but this comes out as snide comments or vague promises that he'll seek vengeance. Ultimately, he turns to villainy in hopes of carving out a new, fearsome identity. Who is Warren Stone now? According to him, he's a foremost rival of the Mad Dogs. He's been there in every fight. You just have to zoom in a little. He knows all the Mad Dogs by name, rehearses his introductions, monologues, and everything. Where Warren considers himself a big deal, trademark, he never leaves a lasting impression. He's just there. He's a conveniently available rope, or an intriguing microscope slide specimen that piques Donatello's mad scientist tendencies. If they give him any attention or focus, the Turtles are far more interested in his painful molasses-slow ability to regenerate parts than the petty, showboating man behind it all. Despite his role as Rise's butt monkey, Warren never gives up. He insists that he's an important, noteworthy figure. He'll scream it to the heavens, at his reflection, anywhere and everywhere. And admirably enough, he genuinely believes in his puffed-up image. When he screams something close to Voltar's trademark line, "I demand to be acknowledged!" he has the tenacity and resilience to back that up as a viable threat. Someday. Running joke aside, he can and does command attention when he needs to. When he forces his way into Baron Draxum's exclusive Villains League, he's accepted in, acknowledged as someone with valuable skills or expertise, and included in the Baron's plans to defeat the Turtles. Granted, Draxum's minions recruited Todd because he was just adjacent enough to the Turtles' rogues gallery. If Todd was included as a mistake, why not accept someone that's actually on board with fighting the Turtles? Though, when Draxum later goes after Warren to take the Shredder's claw, he has to put in some amount of effort and torque to seize it. Hypno is also introduced in Warren's introductory episode, Newsworthy. Unlike Warren's willing descent into villainy and a vie for revitalizing his name, Hypno is a stage magician that leaned further into villainous exploits out of either necessity or because his new powers gave him more of an edge than he had before. It's hinted that Hypno still has an ongoing magician career after his transformation. Villainy is more of a side hustle, and as a villain, he's more interested in nabbing novel, famous magic items to expand his repertoire or improve his act rather than being a villain in a vacuum. Hypno is set as a big bad Warren so desperately wants to be recognized as. Hypno is a force to be reckoned with between his new size, stature, slicing rings, and other cleverly placed illusions and tricks. He also brings his stage presence and panache with him, but those effects became that much more effective as a mutant hippo than it ever was when he was human. Warren expects to be worshipped and admired. Hypno similarly seeks respect, but it's attached to proving his skill and craftsmanship. He goes to extreme lengths to prove himself and his abilities if he feels challenged or intimidated, but he would have pursued this effect whether he was a hippo or not. Hypno is still wholly dedicated to and practicing illusions, where Warren retired in disgrace and is chasing his former glory. When they first meet, Hippo brushes off Warren, seeing him as the same easily knocked over obstacle everyone else does. Warren tries to beef up his abilities with the magic amulet, but even with that effect, he's only given the briefest glimpse, as in, "Oh my god, you're such a disgusting eyesore." But he's still underestimated and ultimately ignored. When it looks like Hypno will achieve victorious defeat over the Mad Dogs, Warren steps in and rescues them, insisting the circumstances are a tenuous truce between sworn enemies. His efforts are as one-sided as always. In the episode Warren and Hypno Sitting in a Tree, Hypno meets Warren again under different, more sympathetic circumstances. This encounter feels like their first really substantial interaction, versus their previous encounters as circumstantial enemies and temporary teammates. It was always, he's another mutated villain that's just there. Warren never harbors a specific beef or hang-up against Hypno. He has the same indignant response to any villain or rival that the Mad Dogs consider a greater threat than him. It's more that it's interesting to see that these two made their first on-screen debuts together. The episode Newsworthy was framed from Warren's seething, envious perspective. What does he have that I don't? They could easily become nemesis, or rivals in their own right. Even if it was another brand of Warren's one-sided, I should be the center of the media hype rivalry. But this time, something about the pathetic worm man tugs at Hypno's heartstrings, and he offers him a voluntary hand up where nobody else has before. It's hard to judge what Warren's other relationships that weren't one-sided or born from convenience looked like. Considering how easily his co-host moved on, my guess is that Warren was pompous, self-absorbed, closed off. April shows Warren the fan reaction and recognition he's long yearned for. But unlike every other time where Warren was seeking attention, he takes April's efforts and undying loyalty for granted. He expects her to jump when he says jump. Later, he flips on and blames April for choosing his safety and welfare over Charlotte, too. If Warren is like this with someone that honestly likes him, he was probably the kind of person his coworkers secretly wish would leave or quit. It took getting transformed and hitting absolute rock bottom for Warren to overlook his pride long enough to let someone in, and Hypno happened to be that someone. Warren's perspective of Hypno shifts from someone out to steal his spotlight to a good friend, to something deeper and openly affectionate. He was able to lower his guard around Hypno and become vulnerable enough that he gets to know and adore this very sweet, thoughtful, good-natured magician. Unlike with April, Warren was in a position where he was looking at someone else as a full, autonomous being for the first time, rather than just as an abstract idea or object in his way. He earned Hypno's love, respect, and affection through trying to return their overtures, gestures, and kindness. He empathizes with Hypno, chooses whatever option takes both their feelings and needs into account, and surprisingly, screams green flags for a supportive, loving husband. On Hypno's side of things, he has been mourning the loss of his previous assistant, Doug. He was looking for a new animal assistant, entertained the idea of finding a romantic partner, albeit said attempt was derailed by a Bugs Bunny caper, and was even trying to resurrect his old friend at one point. When Hypno finds Warren in a rough spot, he takes a chance on him, and immediately fills the role of a warm, friendly face he'd probably want if the roles were reversed. Warren takes over Doug's previous position as Hypno's new assistant. The fact that attention-seeking Warren willingly takes on a helper role speaks volumes on how much he cares about Hypno. No matter where he is on his personal vendetta journey, Warren decided that Hypno is more important than his wounded ego. And Hypno looks at or talks about Warren like he could hang the moon. Outside of the assistant role, every other title Warren or Hypno use for each other places them on an equal, even playing field. They're collaborators that actively communicate and try to understand each other's motives or opinions. And where Warren plays assistant, Hypno gladly steps in with heists, capers, fighting the turtles, or Baron Draxum, whatever Warren needs. While the show dances around giving these guys a specific label, presumably for censorship reasons, they stare at each other with starry-eyed fondness, cuddle, hold hands, openly declare, "I love you too!" They're a cutesy, dedicated honeymoon phase couple. They even get an on-screen kiss. Well, cheek kiss, but still counts. Hypno is a huge part of what keeps April sold on Warren's charisma, and that he's still a curious, fascinating person now. She's able to catch a glimpse through Hypno's very smitten rose-tinted glasses, and she approves. Consider April Warren and Hypno's biggest supporter and probably de facto bridesmaid if they ever got married. Wouldn't have any people to include in a bridal party, but still. April would willingly go, and that counts for something. And I choose to read the "and they were roommates" phrasing, as these two still figuring out what their dynamic is, and if it needs a defined label. Some couples or pairs leave their relationship undefined. They're romantic and close, but they don't need a ring. It's enough that they know what the other's limits and boundaries are. That said, one of the Rise staff did refer to Warren and Hypno as life partners, so these guys do figure out what works for them, eventually.